Oi, pessoal! A gente teve a oportunidade de conversar com Mikael Forslind, CEO e game designer da Elden Pixels, que é um estúdio sueco, que nesse ano lançou a Void Hope, um jogo narrativo com alguns elementos de plataforma, que é todo construído em pixel art e com uma atmosfera bem dos anos 80. Durante a entrevista, a gente falou não só sobre a Void Hope e as referências do jogo, mas também sobre o mercado sueco de games, outros títulos que foram lançados pelo estúdio e muitos outros temas aí focado no mundo gamer. Antes da gente começar, aqui na descrição tem o link da nossa crítica de A Void Hope, então se você tiver interesse em saber mais sobre o jogo, a crítica tá na descrição. Não esqueça de deixar um like e se inscrever no canal se ainda não é inscrito, que a gente quer trazer muitos outros conteúdos assim pra vocês. A entrevista tá toda traduzida, então tá com legendas em português, é só dar o play e conferir, e muito obrigada desde já. First of all, I want to thank you for doing this interview to us. It's really important to us. And my first question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about Elden Pixels? How you started the studio, why did you create it, how many people are working there?
Yeah, Elden Pixels was founded in 2016. That would make it 8 years ago. And we came together because I actually worked at another gaming company. I was their marketing manager. And I had a lot of fun and it was a great and interesting job, but I also felt kind of the need to try game design on my own to learn more about the facts of game development. So early in 2014, just when I started at the company, basically, I decided to try to make my own game of sorts outside of working hours. So I started with that, and we assembled a group of friends because I didn't know how to program. I just knew the concept of game design, and I had the idea. I was basically the idea guy, but instead of just getting someone else to do it, I assembled a team. So 3 friends of mine got together, and then we had a game designer, level designer, a programmer, a musician, and an artist. And we started making a game called Alwa's Awakening. And we did that about 2 years it took. And in 2017, early 2017, almost 7 years ago, more than 7 years ago, we released that game. And that was our first game. And that was what made Elden Pixels come together as a group and later on a company.
And then tell me more about what is the day-to-day work in the studio, because people have this interest about gaming and how to make games and how they started their own studio. So how is the process to make a new game? How Elden Pixels works?
Yeah, so we have our office here in Gothenburg, Sweden. It's the second biggest city in the small country of Sweden. Only 10 million people live here, I think, so pretty small compared to other countries. But we have our office here, and we are here. I'm here 5 days a week, but the other staff is here ranging from 3 to 5, depending on a little. Sometimes they work from home. But we normally get to the office around 8 or 9 in the morning, and then we have a small morning stand-up where we just discuss what we did the previous day and what we're planning to do today. And then that could take normally 50 minutes to 30 minutes. But after that, normally we have some sort of design discussion where we need to discuss the design, on the current tasks on today. Since we're making kind of small games, we're just a small team of 4 people, 5 people sometimes. It's mostly small games. That means that we could sometimes just decide on the day what we're going to work on. Okay, we should work on this system today and that tomorrow. It's not like we're spending, months doing something. It's just normally a day or 2. Even for the biggest system, that's normally a week.
You talk about Sweden, so I want to ask you about the gaming industry in Sweden, because I make some research and I saw there is a huge industry there. Yeah. So can you tell more about the scenario, a little more about the gaming industry in your country?
Very early back in the 80s, I was born in 81, so I'm old. And back in mid-80s when Nintendo, the first Nintendo NES came to the world, Sweden was actually one of the first. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sweden was the first distributor outside of Japan to have the Nintendo. So they were very, very, very early in the process of distributing the Nintendo here in the Nordic countries. So very, very early we got Nintendo, and I think 30 years ago we were 7 million people here. So, and I think their top numbers was like 500,000 people were members of the Nintendo Club back in the 80s. So a lot of people my age or a little younger and a bit older grew up playing Nintendo. And then very early we got internet and a lot of people got computers. So like very early on, we had access to both Nintendo and computers, and especially the people around my age, like 30 to 50, are in the position where they can, work with game development, start companies, do those kinds of stuff. And a lot of the big reason why we have a big gaming industry here in Sweden, it's also because it's a cold, dark country. Like our summers are short and our winters are long. So like from like September to April, it gets dark at around 2-3 p.m. or something like that. Depends on where in Sweden you live, of course. But that means you have a lot of time to just sit in front of computers and stuff like that instead of being out in the sun doing fun stuff. So that's part of the reason I think a lot of people growing up in the 80s, 90s, were able to become, successful with computers, and they went on to start, different companies, it's a good gaming industry here. But to be honest, kind of where, I have a son, he's 5 now, and, if I'm not spending time making games, I'm spending time with my family. So the time I have to actually, read about the gaming industry is little to none these days. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening that I kind of miss because, it's hard to stay on track on everything.
Another question now about Avoid Hope. I really want to know how you started this story for the game. If you could talk about the process of creating this narrative, where you started, where the idea came from.
Avoid Hope is this story about a sort of family trapped in this dysfunctional society of sorts, and this virus, this plague comes across the world and enslaves everyone, and the family is trying to escape. And Avoid Hope was a challenging game to work on because it started as something completely different. We started with this game back in 2021, actually. Normally we only take 2 years to make a game, but this has been going on for 2.5, almost 3 years, which is long for us since we're a small company. And for the longest time, we kind of struggled with the story. But then I've sort of had this idea about going into the digital world and, the potential scares and horrors of the digital world. And with that story, I found a very talented sci-fi and horror writer, actually based here in Gothenburg, which is kind of weird because, there aren't that many, Swedish horror and sci-fi writers. And to find one, and she's basically like 5 minutes away from our office. And we met, and she was really nice, and we hit it off, and she agreed to write the story. So together with her, she wrote the story, and we kind of went back and forth trying to, decide on exactly how the plot should work, because she's never written for video games before. So there's a lot of okay, this needs to work with this, and we needed to go back and forth in order to make the story work with the game. In the end, we ended up with a really cool, unique story, and it's very, I wouldn't say abstract, but it's the void in the title, Avoid Hope. It's like a lot of the game is for your own interpretation. So it's not a game with bunch of dialogues and cutscenes. It's very thin in dialogue, and it's very much up for the player themselves to kind of try to realize what's going on and to make their own conclusion of what the story is. So that was really fun, and I have very fond memories of taking long walk in the woods, and just being on the phone with Frida, who's the name of the writer who wrote the story, and we were just discussing in details about what was her interpretation of the story and what's my interpretation of the story. Because even though we were both creating the story, there were so many things we could interpret. So okay, so you're thinking this, okay, I'm thinking this, so this might work, and we went back and forth. And so a lot of the story came from walks in the woods, which was fun. And I'm very glad how it turned out. It's an unusual story compared to our previous games.
There is some inspirations that you have for this story, like a movie, a book, something that bring this atmosphere to the gaming?
Yeah, like I'm a huge movie buff, so me and my wife, we watch movies like as often as we can. Normally, these days when we have a 5-year-old, it's only on weekends, unfortunately. But I've been watching movies, ever since I was a kid. So I grew up watching all of those classic 80s and 90s. But a lot of the inspirations for Avoid Hope came from normally, I'd say modern movies. There's this movie called The Road, which is with William Mortensen, and it's actually, I think it was a book that was turned into a movie. I unfortunately never read books. I'm too dumb, so I just watch the movie instead. But this movie called The Road, it's great. It's very atmospheric, and we borrowed inspiration, a lot of that from that movie, but also basically everything came from different horror movies. It Follows. It's also a very huge inspiration, mostly for the soundtrack, because it has an immaculate, awesome soundtrack, very like horror-esque, but also very like not metal as a genre, but it's very like harsh sounding soundtrack. But mostly also John Carpenter, who did like all the 80s horror movies, Halloween and The Thing, and those kind of like sci-fi movies of sorts. So I almost feel a bit ashamed that I only took inspiration from movies, because it was kind of struggling for me with all the inspiration from movies. I was basically just going with the setting, the atmosphere, the story, and like my programmer, who was busy doing all the programs, like, yeah, you do all the cool mechanics, because I can only think about the aesthetics, the sounding, the sound design and stuff like that. So it's a game very drenched in atmosphere, but a bit lackluster in game mechanics, if you say so. It's not, if you're interested in a fast-paced platform, and this is not the game for you. If you're interested in aesthetic, atmosphere, and cool soundtrack, this is a game for you. So yeah.
I really like puzzle games, and the level design is so great. It's a really enjoyable game. It's something different that we don't saw with frequency in other games.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, people that have reviewed the game and played the game definitely find it hard to compare to other games, because it's an unusual game. So that's really something I take to heart, because there's so many games out there where you just kill and do stuff and kill and shoot and collect stuff. And as a game maker, I'm not interested in really creating those kind of games. I want to either have some fun or create something hopefully memorable. So it's very fun to have people say stuff like that. One game I can say I was inspired by, though, is a game called Another World. It's an old retro game from the, also once again, 80s, 90s, 80s probably, can't remember. It's like a cinematic platformer. It's very, not much explained, stuff like aliens, very, lack of music, very, very cool and very atmospheric. And when people compare our game to Another World, that makes me happy, because it's something I, grew up playing. So.
And you have something to share about the challenge of creating this gaming, creating this world, because I think you are the CEO as well, right? So you have so many work to do, and the process of developing a game. So you have some challenge to share with us about the process, or a significant technical thing that happened during the concept of the game?
Yeah, I'd say definitely the most challenging part about creating Avoid Hope was trying to create an interesting game and a world that you kind of exist in and you can explore, but I didn't want to make a game where you kill and, just collect money and stuff like that. So you kind of can avoid the enemies. You can't shoot them, but they're not dead. They're kind of like, just respawning again. So you're kind of just trying to evade the enemies, and you're not really collecting stuff. It's not a journey about collecting stuff, because normally games are just, taking everything, harvesting everything. Everything is about the resources. And I didn't want to make that kind of game. But with that said, that was kind of hard because at the same time we have this familiar setting with a platform game. You have the puzzles, you have the doors, you have the enemies. So we're kind of like, are we making a walking simulator here? Because that was kind of the questions we asked ourselves, in the team. But there aren't really any 2D platforming walking simulators, so it's kind of hard to just call it that as well, because people would kind of be confused about that. In the end, we call it a narrative adventure, but we're struggling with some people, going into the game trying to, okay, it's a platformer, so I'm, hoping I can shoot aliens and collect stuff, and they're taken aback because how weird and different it is. So that's kind of the challenging part, trying to design an interesting game with the setting that's still fun to play, and also kind of marketing the game, making it a product that people can, pick up and understand what it is. And I think that's the most challenging part. Like, I think people are struggling to kind of understand what kind of game it is. Like, because it looks like a platformer, it looks like a puzzle platformer, and it is that game of sorts, but it's also like, I'm being like, artsy and go, hey, it's a movie, think of the game as a movie, but people aren't really, it's not a movie, it's a platform, but I'm like, it's not a platformer. So that's beside the creation of the game, selling the game, making it a product that we can actually sell, has been challenging to, people to understand what it is. Because if you see a shooter, it's a shooter. If you see a platform, it's a platformer. It's, in these days, it's even harder to make something that's unusual. So that's been challenging, I'd say. Hopefully, I think it can find. It's only been out for a month. Games have a life that can last forever almost now. So, but it's struggling a bit to find its audience, I say. So I'm hoping it will in time.
When you talk about collecting things, you use this, for example, we have these things in the game that you collect as well, but are not like taking things all the time, but they help in the abilities of the character. How do you came with this idea? Like, how we're gonna create that and use these items to take the character to another level, but not in the normally easy way to do it?
That was also quite a challenge, because quite early we decided that the story is about the family. So I'm not sure if people really think about this, but they're only talking to each other throughout the game. This might be a spoiler, so cover your ears if you haven't played the game, but they're actually just talking to themselves. They're never engaging with anyone else in the game, because there aren't any other people that are available to talk. And spoiler. That was also, how do you explain to the player that you pick something up, that how you use it? So that's something, because normally if you play a platformer or adventure game, if you find an object, you get a pop-up that says you found an object, press this to do this and this, and we don't have nothing about it. We have no UI trying to explain what this does. We're just teaching it through game design. So having interesting, objects that you can use and sort of have people understand how to use it was also challenging. But that kind of limited the game to, simpler items. But we've made games before. This is our third or fourth, depending on the count, game. So we could just, take from ideas that we have in previous games and, see what we can do for this one. So yeah, we had more ideas, but it was hard to, make them all fit.
And I have a little question about, now that I remember, about a poster in some walls in the game. It's from a movie.
Yeah, from several movies, but yeah, there are a few. I don't want to spoil them, but one we've started with, which is my all-time favorite movie, is a movie called Requiem for a Dream, and I love that. I can't remember if it's some sort of interview, but I think it's interview with the director, and he calls the movie like an urban horror story, and that's something we kind of took as an inspiration as well, because our game is set in a city, it's set in an urban city, and it's not a horror game per se, but it definitely has a horror atmosphere to it of sorts. So an urban horror movie sounds like an interesting, aspect. And Requiem for a Dream is an amazing, scary but an amazing movie. And with that, we had that poster, but after that, we just had our artists create more movie posters, and It Follows is there as well because that's a huge inspiration. But the other like 3 or 4 or 5 posters, can't really remember. That was just the artists who, created whatever movies they thought could fit. And it's cute to have those small, amount of pixels and still be able to make out what it is.
And about the universe of Avoid Hope, I know it's a really closed game, the story, but can we saw another game in this universe, like with maybe another story in this universe as well?
Every time you make something, it's kind of at first you don't, I never want to touch that again because I'm so finished with it because we've been spending time on this game forever. The game is has a shader on it, like a technical art style that we can light any art in it. So any art can exist in different shades, and we can have like darkness in it. And we kind of did a test where reversing it, where instead of having darkness cast on everything, we instead had light shine on everything. So we did like the opposite instead. So we did like reflections and stuff like that. And that's quite challenging to do with pixel art because you can't really just point the light and it's in whatever game and you're using and have it. You need to have some, cool tech behind it. And we did that. So we did tests with it. And for quite some time, we were just, wouldn't it be cool if you could, play daytime and nighttime and stuff like that? And you revisit the same, the next morning and stuff like that. But in the end, it's game development. You have to make tough choices. So we ended up cutting it, but we still had like a very cool look where we could just have the same level, but fully lit in daylight, and it looked completely different. And that's something we jokingly said we should make, instead of Avoid Hope, we should make a Light Hope, which would be the sequel where we explore something else. But that's just ideas. Right now, we immediately jumped into a new game, and we're busy with that, and that can take a year or two, and who knows. But we'll see where we'll go in the future.
Can you talk about this new game, like giving a spoiler, talking a little about it?
So we are working on a new game called The Prisoning, Fletcher's Quest, and it's completely the opposite of Avoid Hope. It's like a Metroidvania. It's procedurally generated of sorts. So we have parts where you get a new fresh play every time you try, and it's an insane story. We're jokingly saying it's inspired by real events. It's really not, but we're exploring like the mind of a burnt out game developer, and then you're going inside the mind of a game developer, and inside that mind you're playing as this country musician, which is like your inner manifestation of yourself. So you're trapped in your own mental prison and you need to escape, and you do that by getting rid of your anxiety and basically running and gunning and shooting bosses. So it actually started at something it goes way back, and I won't delve into much of the details, but after we released Alwa's Legacy, which was a game we did in 2020, like we immediately wanted to do something else, so we just jumped into like a weird platforming game where you just shoot. So we wanted to have everything that was not the Alwa universe, because Alwa is a fantasy game. It has its rules, it has to be realistic to the fantasy setting. And we made this game that was completely, anything worked. We just had our fun ideas, like everything that was fun, we put it in it. And then time passed. And throughout the years, like in 2021, 2022, we kind of revisited this game for a month or two, when we had some time over, before summer ends or after summer, and we just had fun with it. And eventually it became a game. And after Avoid Hope, we just needed a new product. And we thought for the longest time, should we jump on this? Is it too weird? Is it fun? But in the end, we decided, because although it's a Metroidvania, we've done Metroidvania games before, there were so many ideas, because Avoid Hope was challenging to design. It was hard to design, and The Prisoning is easy to design. We have we have like 20 pages of crazy ideas, and anything goes in this game. And you're fighting like horses, and you have a shark that's riding on a surfboard. And I have no idea if anyone else finds this funny, but we're laughing all the time, because anything like today we were trying to decide like how a snake should appear, and we were discussing should it have its door, should it wear a hat, should it come from a magical snake portal, should it like remove his snake skin, and everything is just funny, and we're just laughing every design meeting, and we're having so much fun. And now we're actually allowing people to play it. So anyone who wants could just reach out, and I'll send them a Steam key. And the game is basically, it's very not complete, but definitely has a lot of content in it. So, and it's super fun game. We're having a lot of fun with it. And I think, judging from the early tests, that people seem to, really respond to it well. And just like 2 hours ago, we had, where you're fighting this giant shark, and you're kind of shooting his clothes. And I haven't seen this, so I was the first time seeing it. And you're shooting his clothes off, and then he kind of gets embarrassed, so he's naked. He's a naked shark, and then he kind of leaves the screen and comes back with a new set of underwear on. And this was the idea we had, but actually seeing it in the game, I just laughed out loud. And I'm having all these reactions to the game every time I'm playing it, and it's so much fun. So it's everything that Alwa's Legacy and Avoid Hope isn't. It's like just anything that we can throw in there. It doesn't matter how strange it is. It's just whatever works, and it's crazy amount of fun. And I don't think I never had this much fun creating a video game, because there aren't any really rules to what we were throwing in there.
I really want to play it. I will send you an email. I really want to play it, because it seems amazing. It seems like so much fun. It's gonna be a platform as well. This game will follow this type of rules, or you're gonna do something, I don't know, in some phases it will change it, things like that, because you were saying like there is so many ideas that you are throwing in this game and trying to do something fun, something completely different. So you have something in mind like that?
Yeah, it's definitely like a straight-on platformer Metroidvania. And even if you don't if you're hesitant about the humor, the gameplay is still fun and tight. So you're having your upgrades, you're having your weapons, you're having your bosses. So the mantra has always been to design something that's really fun to play. And even if you're not a fan of the humor, you're still having fun, going through the world. So hopefully we'll appeal to anyone who likes, a good platformer, because we have been making platformers for quite some time now. So I hope we were able to, at least make them fun. And if you like the comedy and the inspirations that it's of course also inspired by movies, but this time, comedy movies. And yeah, it's super fun, and we're having a lot of fun with it, and hopefully we'll be able to release it even this summer, like because we have been working on it on and off for several years almost. So now now we're just making a short, small game, but we're getting it out there, and hopefully this summer or maybe this fall.
I have like a other question. Is not really related to Elden Pixels games, but you have this indie highlights in your website. How this idea started?
So yeah, we've been doing that for on and off for a couple of years. Like, it's basically just an interview, and we have a template. We're just giving people a chance to games that we kind of like and kind of want to play ourselves and kind of want to support. Maybe not huge publisher or investor funded indie games, but smaller developers. And we've been doing this for a few years, and it's fun. And some are friends and some we've known, and getting a chance to talk to people. And like one time we did this game, I think it's Moldavia. I could be horribly wrong now. I'm ashamed if I'm wrong. But they came from there. They are based there, and they were in Sweden actually at the convention. And I saw their game, and I went up talking to it, and they didn't know I was from Elden Pixels. And I just started playing the game, and I mentioned I was from Elden Pixels, and I was like, oh, we did the Indie Hamlet with you, last year, and it's nice to meet you. And I was like, yeah, cool that you got the game out. And we basically have no, reasons to do it except that we want to support it, because we're not really gaining anything from it. It's just fun to have it. I wish I did more. We only do it, every other month or so, but we're busy making video games, so it's hard to find time for everything. But I actually was on the page like a week ago, and I was like, it was a few months ago now. We should do it again.
Mikael, I think so we can finish the interview. Can you send a message to Brazil and talk about Avoid Hope and other projects, make an invitation for the Brazilian gamers to know about Elden Pixels and the projects? And thank you again for this interview. It's really important to us.
Well, thank you everyone for supporting our games. We have been making games for a few years now, and we hopefully can continue making games. And everyone that supports us by getting our Alwa games, Avoid Hope, or our future titles presenting would help us tremendously, because it's just the four of us. It's not like we don't have any publishers, we don't have any investors. I'm the sole owner of the company, and we're as indie. The term indie is kind of washed out at the moment because no one knows really what indie means. But in that sense, we're indie because it's only us, and we'll do our best to support our games with localizations for the Brazilian audience as much as possible. I know we don't have them for all our games, but we aim to in the future. And it's Brazil is getting bigger and bigger as an audience, noticeably. So that's really cool. That's a good job on your end, and we hope to be able to support you. And I thank you so much for supporting us.